All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Week number 2, we got the NFL slate to dive into in today's video, except for Sunday Night Football. That will be its own video, but in today's video, we're going to be going through every single game on the board on Sunday. I'm going to give you my lean on the side. I'll give you my lean on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within the game as well. But as always, keep an eye on the pinned comment of this video. That is where all of my final plays, if you do want to fade me, everything that I'm locking in myself will live. In terms of how we did in week number 1, holy crap. I know I recapped it in the Thursday Night Football video we posted, but man, oh man, we go 17-3 in week number 1. I'm shocked by it. I don't consider myself a walking, talking 17-3 betting man. I'm much more average than that, but nonetheless, we got to stop and smell the roses. We swept that Friday Eagles and Packers game. We swept Monday Night Football, went 7-1 in this video last week, and then we went 2-2 in Thursday Night Football, but had the Xavier Worthy touchdown to help us get a little profit there. So every single video we did, we made a little bit of green, which, you know what? We'll hit the soundboard one more time. Can I promise this every single week? No. That's why we have a brand called Fade Me. But nonetheless, got to stop and smell the roses. Like I said, what a great start to week 1. But guys, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're here every single week doing the Sunday slate. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first game we're looking at here is going to be the Lions taking on the Bucs. So both teams coming off of wins in week number 1. I guess you could say Tampa Bay is a little bit more dominant, but their opponent was a little bit worse, right? They beat Washington 37-20. The Detroit Lions 26-20. In terms of what we have right now, Lions sitting at 7-point favorites. I've seen a couple 7.5s out there, which is obviously a huge key number in football. And then the total sitting at 51. I think I'll start with the total in this one. I don't mind the idea of taking a peek at the over. Last time these two teams played was last season. 31-23 was the finish, so 54. And we have both offenses that kind of did their job last week. You know, the Lions weren't even firing on all cylinders, and they ended up putting up 26 points. And I don't need to say much about that Bucs offense, right? Though it was the Washington defense, and Detroit should be a little bit better today. 37 points. This is a Tampa Bay team dating back to last year. 2 of their last 3 games now, they've gone over 30 points. I think they have some firepower there. Baker is so slept on. Browns organization, Browns fans, you guys must be kicking yourselves. But yeah, my main play in this one, I think, is going to be a peek at the over. I don't mind Detroit to win this game at home. I just don't know if I love that 7 number. So maybe a way that we could play this would be to create some sort of a same game parlay of, you know, Detroit money line, so we get all those points back, and taking some sort of an alternate over that we could hit to maybe get some sort of digestible odds there. I do have a player prop that I don't necessarily mind in this spot. It's going to be Sam Laporta under 19.5 for his longest reception. Right now, that's minus 115 over on MGM. Everywhere else, it's in the minus 120s, minus 125 on DraftKings, minus 125 on Caesars. I like this. He's hit it in 5 straight games. His longest catch in week number 1 was 18. And head-to-head here, he has 2 games against the Bucs. Obviously, that defense is a little bit different, but he has a 19 and a 15. And if he's going over the middle and whatnot, I don't necessarily think he's going to have one of these long seam-type passes. So that's a lean. Keep an eye on the pinned comment to see if we do roll with that, but I like the value there for under 19.5 for Sam Laporta's longest reception. Now, I'm not saying fade his receiving yards or his receptions. I love Sam Laporta. He's phenomenal, but just for that longest reception, he can have 10 19-yard catches, and we still cash that one. All right, the next game we're taking a peek at here is going to be the Titans taking on the Jets right now. Titans sitting as road dogs plus 3.5. Speaking of fans wanting to, you know what, themselves, I mean, Titans fans, the way that game ended against the Bears week 1, yikes. But in this one, sitting at 3.5-point dogs at home, total sitting at 40.5 as they take on the Jets. The Jets lose that week 1, you know, Monday Night Football game. Everyone seemed like they were all over the Jets. And while I do think the Jets will have a decent season, I don't know if they're fully in form yet. Everyone talked about in that Monday night game, like, oh, well, you know, C-Mac's now out, but Williams and Ayuk, they weren't in camp, their contract. It's like, well, Aaron Rodgers missed all last year. Like, talk about having to acclimate to a new team and whatnot. But nonetheless, in this one, I think the spread is kind of telling. Like, this is not a big number to cover. If I were to roll this, maybe buy a half point or pay a lot of juice for the full point and get that to within a field goal or at least at -3. But I'm going to lean towards the Jets. Again, I think they looked a little bit worse than they truly are when they lost 32-19 in week number 1. Tennessee probably could have and should have won that game against the Bears, but it's still the Bears. Like, Caleb Williams didn't look all that great. That defense went off. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the Titans went out there and played super well. They only scored 17 points. So I think the Jets have such a good defense that they're going to give Will Levis and company trouble here. And honestly, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Aaron Rodgers, like not the worst of offensive cores to have going up against a squad. And if the Bears, though they did score, defensive points here, if the Bears could put up 24 points against the Titans, I'm curious to see what this Jets team will do. So I'm going to lean towards the Jets, but again, maybe massaging that number to get it to within a field goal. Again, -3 would be that push potential, but if you want to go a little bit safer, I think that -2.5 may be the move. The total's sitting at 40.5 right now. I think a lot of people are going to jump at that and say, ooh, like Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, let's go over. I'm not all that sold now. I'm not saying I'm fully on the under. I don't think I end up touching this one, but if I had a gun to my head, I don't, but I might be leaning towards that under. If this is a Jets team that gets up early, Tennessee doesn't have the firepower, in my opinion, to be able to kind of come back and make this thing a high-scoring game, and the Jets can run the ball. And if the Titans get up early for whatever reason, right, I think that this is going to be a spot in which they'll keep pounding the rock with their two running backs, not necessarily pounding it, but trying to get the ball in their hands, meaning the clock's going to run, the ball's going to stay in bounds, that type of thing. So I'll lean towards the under, but I think my main lean in this one is going to be Jets minus the points. But again, I'd really love to get that inside a field goal, or at least at a field goal, in all honesty. And all right, real quick, guys, before we do move on with the rest of the games, I wanted to shout out Underdog. If you are not on Underdog yet, you're absolutely missing out on one of the most fun apps to use, but honestly one of the best apps built for these player props and DFS type of apps out there. They have a CeeDee Lamb free square for this week, 0.5 total yards. He got paid. He's having a good season. Dak looked good in week number 1. Go check it out, guys. That link is in the pinned comment. You're also going to get up to $1,000 in deposit bonus, like no brainer there, right? Head over there, deposit some, you'll get some bonus, and you get the CeeDee Lamb free square. And they've been dropping discounts like you read about as well. They have 3 discounts each week. You pick one, that type of thing. Really cool stuff over on Underdog. If you don't know what Underdog is, it's a player prop app in which you combine 2 or more props, taking their more or less on their set projection into a slip. The more you win, the more you get paid out. And what's great is they offer these types of free squares, which just pretty much adds a little booster to your slip, because we know CeeDee Lamb should get 0.5 yards. So go check it out, guys. That link is in the pinned comment. It's also in the description. You'll get all those deals that auto apply the code and everything like that. But let's jump back into these games here. Next up, we were looking at my New England Patriots. They did get a win in week number 1, but I think I also know how bad they'll be this season. But hey, there is hope. It's a lot better to be a Patriots fan this year than last year, even after just one game. But you know what? I can't complain as a freaking New England fan, can I? Based on what I've lived through. So let's jump into this one. Right now, Pat's sitting at home at 3.5-point dogs, much like we just talked about the Titans. The total in a similar range as well, sitting at 38. Now, while I will say this should be a low-ish scoring game, I think 38 may be a little bit too low. Like, even the fact that Bengals stunk and the Patriots scored 16 points last week, like, the Bengals missed out on a couple touchdown opportunities that would have made a 26-point finish look more like, I guess, 33, which would be a lot closer to this number. And that's just coming from someone that watched the game live, right? So I don't mind taking a peek at the over. Is it something that I'm going to be racing to the window to try and get in place and all that type of thing? Hell no. This is still, like, admittedly so, a Patriots team. And the Seahawks aren't all that great. They might have looked great or good in week number 1. They started slow, but, the Broncos ended up broncoing. So I don't necessarily, think that this is a spot for really either team to dominate. I'm still going to lean towards the Seahawks, though. I'll fade my own little hometown team here. 3.5 points. I feel like the Patriots regress after last week. Everyone's riding high. I get it. It should be, a fun season. At least, we have some hope. But overall, we're looking at this one, and this is still, let's not forget, a win total team that was sitting at 4.5. And the Seahawks, can make some plays. They have wide receivers. They have two good backs. Kenneth Walker, filthy. Ramondre Stevenson is as well. But I still think the Seahawks are just, half a shoulder, half a head above the Pats in this spot. Now, one spot I don't mind the idea of is potentially looking at Ramondre Stevenson, either his over 2.5 receptions or just his receiving yards. I think that this is going to be a spot where he's able to kind of get out of the backfield and leak out. And still, Jacoby Brissett was not looking all that phenomenal downfield, in that win. So I think he might be able to dump it off a decent amount. And Ramondre did have 3 receptions in that week 1 game. He only had 3 targets though. So if that's working, they might go back to it. So I like him from a receiving standpoint. Would I love to bet on his rushing yards and all that? Sure, but it's all the way up there at 65 right now. His rushing attempts are at 17.5. Like, could be tough to get me there. One thing I will say is his longest rush at 14.5. That could be something to consider. He hits one hole, and this dude is so good he can make multiple guys miss. So yeah, I don't mind Ramondre Stevenson over 14.5 as a long rush either. But I'm kind of eyeing in on his receptions there. But yeah, Seattle minus the points. Patriots and Seattle lean towards the over, but maybe a player prop type spot that we can kind of find a good value there in Stevenson. Moving on to Jacksonville taking on the Browns. Jacksonville loses a close one to Miami. Honestly, I feel like Jacksonville may have lost that game more than Miami won it, but nonetheless, a 20-17 loss in week number 1. Cleveland, a loss to Dallas in which they really looked bad. Like, I'm surprised Cleveland pulled out 17 points. They lose 33-17. Deshaun Watson in that game just looked absolutely horrendous, like he truly did. In this spot, I think you have to consider Jacksonville. If this spread was honestly any larger, any bigger, it may not be something that I'm all over, but to me, I know it's only week 2, but I feel like it might be a little safe to fade the Browns until further notice, especially when they are on the road, and especially when you can keep this to within a field goal. Like Jacksonville, again, they lost that game against Dolphins just as much as the Dolphins ended up winning it. They should come out a little bit fired up. This is a spot in which I think that, we can continue to fade the Browns. Now, do they have playmakers and whatnot? Sure. But still, if Deshaun Watson is going to stink, Nick Chubb's out for a few more weeks, like this isn't necessarily a tremendous team. And you saw, though Dallas's offense is phenomenal, that defense didn't look all that great, right? So to me, I just don't necessarily see any point in backing the Browns. If you want to stay away from this game, sure, we might end up finally doing that too, right? But for lean purposes and what I would do if I had to in this game, it's got to be considering Jacksonville at -3. And again, their defense looked okay, though. Did Miami really have everything firing on all cylinders? No, there's drama with Tyreek and all that, right? He still had a good game. But to me, it's like Jacksonville's defense, if that thing steps up or even gets back to somehow, some way what it was a couple years back, this should be even more of a slam dunk type of play. So I'll lean in that direction. In terms of a total here, 41.5. Honestly is kind of a weird number. I'd more or less put this at like 39 or 40.5. So I'm going to lean towards the under. That much though, right? Like I'm splitting hairs there with what I would have this pegged at versus what it is. But again, if I have this pegged below that, I got to lean towards the under. That hit for Jacksonville, was it last week, right? 20-17. It didn't hit for the Browns, but the Browns didn't do their job to put those points up. The Cowboys just went off and put a bunch. So I'll still lean towards the under 41.5. All right, Vikings taking on San Francisco. Vikings looked very good in week number 1 there. San Francisco still also got the win. They looked pretty good even without C-Mac, right? Mason looked good. I'm going to start with a player prop spot in this one. I like 2 different player props in this game. So starting with, I like Aaron Jones's over 14.5 for his longest rush. San Francisco has a good defense, a good run defense. I get it. Breece Hall had a 16-yard run against them, so we have at least 1 for 1 in terms of running backs against. But he's hit this in 7 straight games. Obviously, just one game now with Minnesota, but he had a 19-yard rush against the Giants there. Now, yes, it's the Giants. That's a little bit different. But what I don't mind is his over 12.5 rushing attempts. I like this for plus money. If you're paying even -110, -105, I don't like it as much, but you can get it for plus 100 on DraftKings, plus 100 on MGM right now for over 12.5 attempts. Now, I know they may be trailing and having to throw the ball a lot more to try and keep up with the San Fran team, but this is the type of spot in which I think, based on last week, Minnesota realized that they need to establish the run. We cashed that Sam Darnold under pass attempts, even though he was passing the ball really well, right? I think he only threw like 24-ish or something like that times, but he completed a lot of balls. But same thing, they established the run. They gave Aaron Jones the rock. He had 14 attempts for 94 yards and a tutty last week. So I think that they kind of keep that mindset going. And again, I understand that San Francisco is a very good defense. They were really, really good last year and still good even against the Jets in week 1. But the Vikings stand no chance in this game if they don't establish Aaron Jones. And speaking of Aaron Jones, he does have one in the last couple of years here against San Francisco. He has an 18 carries. That was obviously when he was with Green Bay, but there's one that he hit the over in, and then his longest rush against them was 53 in that same game. So he's seen them before. Maybe he feels a little bit comfortable, but this is more so based on the fact that they don't stand a chance if they don't establish Aaron Jones, and I think they're going to try to. Now, in terms of who's winning this game, C-Mac obviously being a huge factor here. Like, is he going to play? Is he out? I guess they're still day-to-day there. Plenty of guys also still injured for the Niners. Like, they have a really, really, really long injury report here, and then Elijah Mitchell, who would be the backup, is injured as well, but we saw Mason look pretty good, right? But for Minnesota, we have some injuries as well. Jordan Addison is questionable. That's going to be one that's worth keeping an eye on. To me, this is probably a spot in which you're either going to buy, I would say 49ers is the lean, but I don't mind the idea of if you could somehow maybe work it into some sort of a parlay or something, get these Vikings, with a few more points behind them. I think they could keep it close, especially if Aaron Jones, is doing what he did last week. Now, again, the Giants versus the 49ers, you're talking two different teams so far apart there, but I don't mind the Vikings keeping it close. I just don't know if this is a big enough number. So realistically, I'd lean towards probably the 49ers again, another favorite. But if this was at 7.5, even just 2 more points, it would make me strongly consider the Vikings. So if we had to throw this in some sort of teaser or something, and maybe we got 5-point teaser, I'd love the idea of the Vikings to keep this within 10. Just because, it was the Giants last week, but a few things looked pretty good in terms of what they had to offer. Now we're sitting here looking at a total of 45.5. I'm not in love with anything on this side. You could either go one way, right? I think that this is going to be a low-scoring game because I think the Niners are going to run the ball like they did, and I think the Vikings are going to try and run the ball too. So I'll lean under, but I could totally see an argument being made to get to 46 points here. You have an offense in which last week Minnesota scored 28 points, and then San Francisco scored 32. There's some studs on both of these teams, right? And when you have Purdy and Darnold as the quarterbacks, guys that may throw, it's funny, we took them both under in pass attempts and hit them both last week, but they're guys that are going to make smart passes and move the ball up the field. Will they have the huge chunk plays? Not necessarily. That'll be more of if JJ gets the ball, he makes a play, and it's the air yards there were 8, right? Same thing with Debo and Ayuk. These are guys that are not going to totally push it down the field necessarily, but they'll move the ball. So I see that angle to get to an over, but to me, I still think that this is I think people are going to sleep on how much the Vikings like to run the ball this season. And I think that's going to, contribute to some under. So I'll lean under 45.5. All right, Packers taking on the Colts. Jordan Love most likely out of this game. Obviously something to keep an eye on there. I don't think it's going to matter all that much. I think even with Love, I might like the Colts in this spot. The Colts at times looked pretty good against the Texans in that week 1 game. They cover the spread. They were +3 and they lose by 2. I like them to win by within a field goal here in this spot. I was kind of impressed with the offense, even though, like I said, at times they didn't look all that tremendous, but they were the second team in the league last year in terms of yards per play offensively. So they were having these big plays. I think top 10 in yards per rush as well. Anthony Richardson looked good. I liked what I saw out of him. This is the type of spot in which I think I can get behind a Colts team. And like I even said in week 1, right? I'm kind of sneaky big on this Colts team success. Now, Richardson, did he look great passing the ball? No, but he had 6 rushing attempts for nearly 60 yards and a touchdown. And Jonathan Taylor had 16 for 50 and a touchdown. So if their run game gets going, all right, I think they're going to be off to the races. And you sit here and look at what Saquon did against the Packers, or even I guess you could make the argument Jalen Hurts. He didn't really do too much on the ground, right? Or we have 12 attempts for 33 yards, enough, but not all that great. But Richardson and Taylor kind of I don't want to say clones, that's not the right way of saying it, but you have a big running quarterback and a filthy running back. It's kind of exactly what Philadelphia had, and they had 140 something yards combined between the two of them. I could see Taylor and Richardson doing something similar here. So give me the Colts minus the points. I wish they were in Indianapolis. Obviously, they're in Green Bay, but especially if Love does not play, I think it's going to be a huge game for the Colts to be able to take kind of the grip of here. Now the total sitting at 41. Green Bay, I don't know. I think I'm going to hold off on this total until we know. I don't think Jordan Love's playing, right? He's doubtful. We've even heard reports that he might be out longer than we think. The dude's not playing, but we don't know it for sure yet, at least at the time of recording. We recorded this a few days in advance. So I'm going to hold off on the total for now until we know that, because if he's out, I'll go under all day long. I think it's going to be a ground game by the Colts attack, and yeah, I'll go under, but it's still kind of a low number in the first place, right? So I'll stick away from it for now. We want to know who's in, who's out, that type of thing. But I think regardless of Love, I may be looking at that Colts. But if he plays, he gets ruled in for whatever reason, we might get a better number, So I like the Colts in this one regardless. But let's see if we can get a really good number. -2.5 right now speaks to me, but we'll see what we can get. All right, before we do get to the rest of these games here, I do want to talk to you guys about the merch brand we have here on the channel. It's called Fade Me. I'm wearing the Wiser tee right now. Tons of new products over there. If we go to our new arrivals, you see we launched our shorts. I said it earlier, the Stop and Smell the Roses tee. This Football Sunday sweatshirt teamed up with Adidas for. It's a great, nice fleece sweatshirt. Obviously, the t-shirt normal. We got the parlay a day keeps the doctor away. Self-proclaimed sharp. It's a good day for a parlay. Tons of stuff over on Fade Me, guys. This is, and I rarely push the merch on the channel, but it truly is like something that one of the things that I'm most proud of creating. All of these products are such good quality. We test them. This shirt is like light and heavy at the same time. I don't even know how to explain it or describe it. So check it for yourself. Head over to fademe.store. You can use the code week2. You'll type it out just like this. Nope, not threes. Week 2, no spaces, week 2, you're going to get anywhere between 10 and 20% off depending on the product that you're at. So week 2 will get you 10 to 20% off, guys. Go ahead and check that out. Fademe.store. If you do want to support what we're doing here and help us grow, make bigger and better content, yeah, consider that. We get the question all the time of you know, how can I donate and that type of thing. It's like, I'd rather you get a product in hand versus just donating, you know what I mean? So head over there, check it out, fademe.store. But yeah, use code week2 for 10 to 20% off. Let's jump back into these games now. All right, Panthers taking on the Chargers here. I chuckle because it's like, what do we do with this team, right? This Panthers team, like, they're young. They're like, I mean, 47-10, and I don't think the Saints are all that great. I loved the Saints, you know, minus the points last week, and didn't even bet it myself if you watch back the video. The Chargers won 22-10 there. Harbaugh's first game looked good. I don't think that their offense looked like, you know, stupendous in a sense, obviously, right? But they still got the job done, and if you're giving me anybody within a touchdown of beating this Panthers team, I don't necessarily mind it. Like, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards together should be able to put this Panthers team to bed. J.K. went for 10, 135, and a touchdown with a 61-yard breakoff at one point in that game. Herbert, again, didn't look tremendous. Didn't look bad, but he didn't need to look good. 17 of 26, 144, one touchdown. This Vegas team, I think Minshew looked okay. Zaire White looked all right, but, like, still, they only put up 10 points, and if the Raiders are only putting up 10 points against the Chargers, I can only imagine what the Panthers will do, and, you know, the Chargers offense against this Panthers team. So I'll lean towards the Chargers minus the 6 points. It's kind of similar to what I said last week. Like, I feel like I'm maybe missing something here. Is it because of the new personnel and whatnot for the Chargers? But, like, why is this within a touchdown? Like, I'll take any NFL team, you know, less a few of them. If you keep it within touchdown for the Panthers, I'll take them all day long. Now, the total, don't really have the strongest of takes in this one. It's sitting at 38.5 on some books. I'll lean towards the over because, you know, say the Panthers go out there and score 10 points again. I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, the Chargers put up nearly 27, that type of thing. Yes, we're not fully at 38, but maybe the Panthers score 14 this week. Who knows, right? So, yeah, I'll lean towards the over. But, again, I think my main play in this one is going to be considering what we have here in terms of the Chargers within a field goal. It's kind of the only way that I'm looking at this. I'd feel so bad to be a Panthers fan right now. I know they're young, and I know they have, like, some players that are talented, but, man, oh, man. All right, next one up's probably a little bit of a messy one. We have Washington taking on the New York Giants here in this spot. Giants, we talked about the Vikings crushing their opponent. It was the Giants, 28-6 week 1. Washington kind of got crushed too. Now, they put up 20 points. Daniels looked okay, but still Tampa Bay was their opponent, and Tampa Bay scored 37, right? So this is a tough spot here. The fact that this is only a 2-point spread, I've seen some ones out there as well. I'll sound the psycho alert alarm. I don't mind the idea of the Giants coming in here and beating this Washington team. Now, yes, there's promise with Daniels and some of the stuff that they're doing there, but I don't think the Giants can be any worse than they were last week. So, again, I sounded the psycho alert alarm. I admit this is crazy, but give me Washington potentially on the money line for plus 115 right now. I think this is more of a toss-up type of a game. The Giants, for what it's worth, obviously divisional here, have won 7 of the last 9 against this team. They're 8-2 in the last 10 against the spread here. They've taken the win in, I believe, the last 2 games in Washington. So there are some trends. Football doesn't always matter because now we're dating back to, 2022? You know what I mean? I get it, but it doesn't hurt the argument. I think Daniel Jones, Neighbors, and company somehow, some way look a little bit better in this game than they did in week 1, which shouldn't be that hard to ask. Do you know what I mean? Like Singletary, their back, didn't really get much going. Daniel Jones didn't get much going. He completed like 50% of his passes, 2 interceptions. Like, they can't get much worse. And I think the Vikings are sneaky way better than the Commanders, you know? So, yeah, I sounded the psych alert alarm. I'm going to stick to it. Giants on the money line, or if you want to be a little bit more safe, plus the points. But I don't think the points end up mattering in this one, in all honesty. Total sitting at 43. I don't think either one of these defenses is superb. We've seen that in week 1. Do they have some guys? Sure. Should the Giants have been a better defense based on some of their additions like Burns and whatnot? Sure. I still don't buy into that yet. I think that's going to be, a 27-21 type of a game, which would be an over. Even if it's like, 20 to 24, we hit an over, So I'm going to lean towards the over in this one. But yeah, I might be crazy, but give me the Giants here plus the points or on the money line. I could do both in all honesty. All right, Ravens taking on the Raiders. First and foremost, I'll start with just the Ravens side of things. If we saw the Chargers, put up kind of a messy, 22 against the this Raiders defense, I have to imagine the Ravens are going to go out there and be able to put up a decent number. So not that I'm leaning the full game over, but I do immediately look at the Ravens here over 23.5, over 22.5. Anything you can get right in that minus 130 to minus 115 range for their team total, I do like. No, obviously they end up losing that week 1 against Kansas City, and they would have hit the under if, they did hit the under 20, but if those toes are in bounds, now we're looking at a 26-27 type of point finish for Baltimore. So they would have, or could have, even though it doesn't count in sports betting, whatever could have, they would have had to hit the over. So I don't mind the spot here. I don't mind the idea of the full game over, but I really don't know what we're getting from this Raiders offense, right? Against a good Baltimore defense too, one that should rough them up at home. I think this is a Baltimore game. I don't want to spend the 9.5 points. That's kind of why I'd look at the Ravens team total over, because even if this is like a 23 to say 25 to or 27 to 21 game, it's like high scoring. The Raiders kind of stuck in there. They covered that 9.5, but the Ravens still hit their team total over. Do you know what I mean? So that's going to be where I end up leaning. It looks like we have decent weather in Baltimore as well, so I think that they go out there and put up some decent numbers. The Ravens have hit the over this line in the over line that I'm giving in 3 straight games against the Raiders. Actually, I think it might be 4 straight now that I say that out loud, but nonetheless, guys, again, it's kind of hybridizing, my baseball word, the total as well as the spread by, eliminating a little bit of the spread emphasis, saying that the Ravens will get theirs, but we don't need to rely on the Raiders, right? So it just really, really, really focuses in on the Ravens, and I think that they could put up, 24, 25 points plus in this spot. So that's where I would go here. Again, I don't like that 9.5. It seems too early in the year to be throwing down a 9.5. And then the total 41.5 is a little bit fishy because I do think the Ravens get theirs, but we'd still need, 17 to 20-something points from the Raiders. They only gave us 10 in week 1, so I'm not all that sold over there. All right, Cowboys, Saints. We've already talked about it. Both teams looked pretty good. Now, maybe the Saints is based on their opponent, but I guess you could say the same thing about the Cowboys, right? Are these two legitimate? The Saints put up, 40-something points? Cowboys put up 33. Like, are they legitimate, or was it the trash that they were playing against? This is Dallas at home with Dak. Like, I have a hard time wanting to fade them, especially after looking good. The defense is good as well, and in New Orleans, like I said, was it the team that they were playing? I have to give a little bit of credence to that, more so than the Cowboys, because the Cowboys kind of just looked like they were, firing. But even still, like, Derek Carr threw for it was like 200 yards, only missed on 5 attempts. He didn't really need to pass it that much. Kamara ran for 83. Like, they did their job, but there still isn't anything truly wowing coming out of that, whereas Dak looked really, really good getting that contract and everything like that. CD looked okay. Dak didn't look, the receivers looked better than I guess you could say Dak did, but Dak had some throws where he put it right there. CD had 10 catches, 10 targets, 5 catches, 61 yards, was it? So I think that they looked a lot better than the Saints did, just from a visual perspective. The numbers, you can make the argument that, Derek Carr only missed 4 passes, right? Kamara ran for a bunch, but again, I'm putting a lot of weight into the fact that they played the Panthers. So based on the eye test, which isn't always the best thing to judge when sports betting, I think the eye test, the Cowboys passed a little bit more, but we're still early in the year too, so we don't have like the 2024 season data. The eye test can be a good thing to go with here. So I like the Cowboys. 6 points is an awful lot. I might do something similar like I just talked about with the Ravens. Just look at their team total over, or potentially look at the team total under for the Saints. Like, I know it's kind of crazy that they had 47 points last week, but maybe an under like 23.5 could be a move, or Cowboys over 23.5, that type of thing. Depending on what you can get for odds, I don't mind the spot there. So I'm going to lean in that direction, kind of a team total splice up, because again, you're kind of eliminating a lot of variables here. I don't like that 6 points. It's right on the touchdown line or 2 field goals line. The total's at 46.5. I think that's a very, very fair number there as well. But based on this one, I think even using those numbers as sort of waypoints, the Cowboys should be able to score 24 points. And then I guess we're looking at a Saints team that may be projected to score a little bit more than we're giving them credit for. But nonetheless, I think Cowboys team total over might be the thing that I touch here, because say the Saints do go out there and score 47 points again, right? Just say that. At least the Cowboys can still try to get theirs. They don't have to cover 6 points. They can score 24 points and we cash. So kind of my thought process there. It's a way of beating around the bush to getting to a team that you think is going to be successful without having them to cover this big number. All right, Cardinals, Rams, I think I'm missing something here because I don't really get why the Rams are underdogs. Puka being out, I'll give you that. I understand it. But still, like, Cooper Kupp returned to form. Kyren Williams looked good. Like, they were one interception away from making that game a whole lot different against the Lions on Sunday Night Football. So a little interesting here. I get it. Arizona's at home. They looked like they competed pretty well against the Bills. But if the Bills played how they played, and I said this on H2H, the show that I do with Tassos, go check that out. It's on the channel. If the Bills played like they played in the latter, I guess, 40 minutes of that game, I don't think the Cardinals have much success. They only scored 11 second half points. They all came in the fourth quarter. Like, the Cardinals, to me, though we had a couple spots that we liked, we had both James Cook and James Conner over in carries, which is something that I'm leaning towards again today, but James Conner's carries were 12.5. Now they're at 15.5, so a little bit different. But overall, like, we spotted that game pretty well. This one is another spot in which I think that I see it fairly clearly. I like the Rams, even without Puka. I think that they have a pretty good defense as well, and the ability to be able to go out there and win this game, not just cover the 1.5 points. So take the points if you want, but I'm going to lean towards the Rams here. Total sitting at 48. I think the Rams do have to play good defense to win this one, so I think to correlate that, I'll lean towards the under, but I'm much more invested in the Rams winning this game or covering this than the total at all. I do have a few player props that I like in this one as well. It's either going to be Matthew Stafford, and I have 3 that I like. Again, we lose some value from last week, but we were all over this. So James Conner, we'll start with that one. James Conner over 14.5 for his longest rush. He's hit that in 6 straight games. He's getting the carries. Like I said, we had his rushing attempts at 12.5 last week. He had 16 carries. Now they bump it up to 15.5. I don't see any reason why he doesn't run the ball for 15 plus times, but it's at 15.5. So I like his over 14.5 for his longest rush. Like I said, he's done that 6 straight games. In game number 1 against Buffalo, 20 yards was his longest rush. And then a couple Matt Stafford spots. I like his longest pass completion, over 35.5 yards. He has a guy now, Cooper Kupp, who should be returned to form, that can catch the ball and go and run with it like a running back and really fight for every yard. It doesn't have to be air yards. It doesn't have to be in the air, anything like that. I like his over 35.5. Now, the problem is no Puka, right? So does Kupp have the same type of game? I could see it happening. Like, I don't think this Cardinals secondary is all that tremendous, and Cooper Kupp, to me, should be able to tear him up. So, yes. And I also don't mind Matt Stafford's over 23.5 completions. He had 34 in that Week 1 game against the Lions, and that was by far a slower-paced type of a game than we saw. Arizona last year allowed the second most pass completions in terms of percentage. The pass attempts against, they didn't have much, but that's because a lot of teams were running on them. But pass completion percentage, they allowed the second highest number. So Matthew Stafford, pew, 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 should be able to go out there and put up some decent completions. He had 34 again in Week 1. Like, let's be real, he threw the ball, was it 70-something times? No, that was passing plays, 74 plays, 51 passing plays. He completed 34 of those. Like, do that again. So both teams stick to their game script. I think we cash both of these props, whether it's the Stafford longest ball or the completion or the James Conner longest rush. Like, just stick to what you guys did last week, and this looks like it's a cash. All right, Broncos taking on Pittsburgh. If Russ plays, we got a little bit of a revenge spot here. You know, Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson in Denver now. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know if he's listed healthy. I think he's still dealing with that. Was it an ankle or something, right? So even if it's Fields, it doesn't change my pick in this one. And again, for another week, we're looking at a lot of favorites, but it's still early in the year. I get it, but I'm going to lean towards the Steelers here, minus the 3 points. Speaking of 3, if you guys made it this far in the video, go ahead and comment 33 or 33 minutes in. and I appreciate the hell out of you. I truly, truly do. So let me know you made it this far by commenting 33. But I like the Steelers. The defense should be too much. We faded Denver last week. We got what we wanted. I think this is the type of spot where we can do something similar. We could go Steelers in a same-game parlay. What we did with the Seahawks last week was took the Seahawks and then knocked the total all the way down. So it was the Seahawks money line and the total low for like -135, -140 on MGM. Could do something similar to the Steelers today. Get them on the money line and then bump this total way, way up because I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game, but 36.5 seems fairly low. The Steelers are coming off of a game 18-10. Denver, though, coming off a game for 46 points, and they did score 20. I don't think they do that against the Steelers, but again, if we bump that total way up, say it's 46.5, we get 10 more points out of it, plus the Steelers money line in the same game parlay, could be how we kind of fit this into the game script there. So yeah, I just feel like Russell Wilson or not, this is such a good defense. They should be able to give Bo Nix and the Broncos trouble. Like Bo Nix at times looked like he was struggling against the Seahawks defense, which isn't all that tremendous, right? So he went for 26 of 42, 2 interceptions, just 138. Their run game didn't get going. Jaleel McLaughlin, 27 yards on 10 attempts. Williams, 8 rushes, 23 yards. Like, these guys didn't look too hot. Seattle did against them, so hopefully the Steelers can kind of replicate some of that. Kenneth Walker went for 100+ yards. Maybe we see some good stuff out of the backs in Pittsburgh as well. Kansas City taking on Cincinnati. This is a tough one. I know most people are going to say, oh, it's an easy Kansas City. It's in Kansas City, 5 points. Bengals looked like terrible last week. Like, this is still Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes, and that isn't exactly a battle Patrick Mahomes is winning in terms of his numbers and win rate against this team. So that's just worth mentioning. I'm not saying I'm fully on the Kansas City side of things, but I think they have a little bit of a bounce-back performance here. My main play, though, is a player prop. I talked about it on H to H as well. We've lost some value in terms of the numbers, so hopefully we can get a good one here. But I like Jamar Chase under receiving yards. Just get it right in like the in the 72, 73 range. Right now it's at 71.5, which again, I got it at 73.5 earlier in the week. So it's kind of tough to see that, but he's hit the under here in 2 straight games against Kansas City. Last year when he played them, 41 receiving yards, and in this season he had 62 against the Patriots, but the Patriots got to Joe Burrow and made it hard. Kansas City should be able to do that for sure. If they can get to Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase isn't going to have his normal time to be able to break down a receiver, or excuse me, a DB and whatnot, and I don't think he's going to get much, Trent McDuffie matchup here in terms of where he lines up. He's going to line up kind of on the outside a lot more. He does go in the slot. He kind of splits it 40, 30, and 20 in a sense. But any one of these Cincinnati defensive backs, I don't think is going to have too much to do to stop him. So that's kind of the concern, right? But again, the idea of getting to the quarterback quick, not letting him break down these guys is what I'm banking this on. So if he has time, Joe Burrow in the pocket, I don't like Trent McDuffie or Watson, or I forget the other guy's name, their slot corner, but it's like, that's going to be kind of tough. So I'm giving it to you both ways. But to me, I do think that this is a spot for the Chiefs to get home, get to Burrow, and not let Chase kind of have all of these opportunities for deep balls or catch and run, that type of thing. So I like that as my main play. And I hate to say it, I might lean Bengals in this one plus the 5 points, just because it seems like a spot in which they can progress, and Kansas City could kind of come back. Like, Kansas City didn't look like they fired on all cylinders against the Ravens. They looked good, but they could have lost that game. Now we're talking Ravens, Bengals, 2 different teams. I'm sounding it, all right? Bengals plus the 5 points. Total sitting at 48. In terms of how these two teams play against one another, 25-17, 23-20, 27-24, 27-24. We should see a decent amount of points as long as the Bengals play a little bit better. But my main play is if they do what they did last week, which they definitely can. I could be wrong about them stepping up. I like the idea of Jamar Chase under in receiving yards. So I could see this being a high-scoring game if both offenses are going, but if is a pretty damn big if. So yeah, it's crazy. Kind of fading the Chiefs here. I don't know if I'll have the cojones to lock it in, but it's where we're at as of right now. And guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button as well. Appreciate all the love and support. Truly, truly. I don't take any of this stuff for granted. All the support on the NFL videos and everything we're doing on the channel. All the other guys are super excited for this NFL season as well. So appreciate you guys. I mean that honestly. Go check out Fade Me again. Use code WEEK2. I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.